Honesty and transparency are how we operate. Supply chain challenges are not always easy, but the commitment from our team to take on the responsibility is unwavering. When you encounter a challenging supply chain crosswind, the whirlwind of options and variables rise and fall. You seek the shelter of predictability. You seek to find the eye of the hurricane. That's where we live. Dunavant. Logistically speaking, we are at the center of it all.
Let the train!
You are listening to What the Truck. Are you ready to truck it? It's time for your nooner with Dooner and my good friend sitting right next to me just got in off a red eye.
Red eye. The last time I was on the show, I was on a red eye.
It's so weird because I reached out to you yesterday. I was like, hey, an opening just came up. And for some reason you were like, no, you're a great guest, but you were like the first name that popped into my mind. And I think it's just that like red eye energy that you put out into the world.
I'm sensitive. Yeah, it was, I'm getting by on a little bit of sleep. I'm glad there's a little bit of distance between us because I need a shower and a good night's sleep.
I know the feeling. And you were over at Daimler North America. We'll jump all into that on the show today in just a little bit. But before we do, I got to gloat. It's like, does Covenant, did they do a bracket, an NCAA bracket tournament?
You know, the guys in our broker, the folks in the brokerage department do.
Yeah.
And they're really into it. I'm not around enough to participate. And all of the rivalry that takes place when you're there in the office every day.
Well, you see, here at FreightWaves, we have a lot of trash talkers. We get a lot of smart people, a lot of data people, a lot of people who know their thing.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? FreightWaves, who's number one? It's your boy, Stooner. What the bracket? Number one up there. And look, there's some people gaining on me, but if you go into their brackets, they're already checkmated. See, you proud of me?
You're good. Can you pick stocks like that too?
I like anybody could in 2020. It was like in trucking when you were like a retail trader. You could just get like Dogecoin at 2 cents, and then like a week later it's 31 cents, and you're making bank, dude.
Enough to take you to coffee.
Well, Matt, yesterday you have a dog, don't you?
I have a great dog. And I know everybody says that because I know you love your dog.
Sure.
And we've talked about that offline before, but I've got the greatest dog in the world.
You got the greatest dog. What's your dog's name?
Tucker the dog.
What kind of dog is Tucker?
Tucker is a golden retriever, the most superior breed of all times.
Yeah, they're up there with labs. I'll give you that. Did you know that yesterday was International Puppy Day?
I didn't know that.
Well, every International Puppy Day, I asked the logistics community to share their puppies and their dogs. And we have some to take a look at real quick here. We got my boy, Randy Savage, his sister, Miss Elizabeth. This is Nick LaLucas. He says, here's our little Ginger growing up into a nice service dog. That's Greg Ackner's. Alan Blankenship's puppies, big snow dog over there. Peter Clifford, he said, let me drive the boat. By the way, handles on dogs, very helpful. That's Marion Hensley, is my buddy Baxter. He's going to be 18 this year, so happy birthday to him. Who's that? Is that a Golden or is that a Chesapeake?
Chesapeake.
That was a Chesapeake Bay. Although, I don't know. The guy right here, he says, that's my boy Finn, 7-year-old Golden, Logan Pritchett.
So, having just got off a flight, a lot of people are taking dogs on their flights now.
Yeah.
And they're not always service dogs. The lady next to me had a little tiny thing under the seat.
Yeah.
It was very good, very nice. But then there was a military guy with a big dog. There was at least 7 dogs on the flight.
You know, you can...
You used to not see that.
You used to have to buy like a service vest and you could get them on Amazon, but you didn't actually need the paperwork. You just needed to have it on them.
I might have had one of those at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah, to get into a hotel.
Break the rules.
Yeah.
You know, also, like, here's a secret. You don't really have to wait for your group at the airline either. Like, if you want to board group 1, group 2, they're not going to stop you.
Yeah, but you don't want to be that guy.
No, you don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, you don't want to be that guy.
Or you don't want anyone to know you're that guy.
Exactly.
Anyways, we got a lot going on the show today. We got former NFL star. We got a guy who played in the Super Bowl. Chicago Bears versus Colts. Played against Peyton Manning, right? Played with Rex Grossman, Sexy Rexy. Played with Jay Cutler. Desmond Clark, former tight end superstar. Started a brokerage last year in May. In a down market, he's going to tell us all about that journey from the Super Bowl. And we'll find out who's a tougher opponent, Aaron Rodgers or a bad freight market. Actually based in Florida.
How you couldn't get him to come here in person? Or is it remote?
It's remote. So he'll be here. We're going to have FreightWaves Tony Mulvey is coming up. He's going to talk about the freight market hitting rock bottom. We'll break down the reject, spot rate, some of these shutdowns. You're all too familiar. You're over at Covenant, so
Man, I picked a great day to be here.
You picked a great day to be
They're
here.
all great, right?
They're all great. They're all great. And then, of course, you'll talk to us about what you saw at Daimler. But before we get to Tony, just got to tip the band. So supply chain challenges are not always easy. But the commitment from the team at Donovan Logistics to take on the responsibility is unwavering. Logistically speaking, they're at the center of it all. Visit them at donovan.com. All right, Tony, come on up here, man. Let's find out what's going on in the market. He is a co-host of With Sonar. You probably see him in the morning on FreightWaves now. And let me bring your mic up for you a little bit, too. There we go. There you go. Looking good, Tony.
Hey.
Introduce yourself to our audience who may not have met you before.
Tony Mulvey, been here 3.5 years, I guess now, working on the research team, expanded more into the media side, TV side in the past year, but happy to be here.
You've had a big week. He was part of our breaking news on that USX story. You had to do a roundtable on short notice, and you did a great job, so we all appreciate that. There is a comment, though, and this is a serious time in the market. A lot of people are losing jobs. I mean, it's not a good time. We try to have levity on the show just because we can't just sit here depressed the whole time. But someone posted on LinkedIn, this guy, Dominic Angelo Tully, said there's a lot of pain in transportation right now. Rates are below March 2020 lows. Owner-operators driving at a loss or selling their trucks. Exorbitant factoring fees, 60 to 90-day payment terms are the norm. The silent tax of slow payments is inflation. So they're talking about the pressure that is put on everybody, and it's really tough. So Craig Fuller, he put out a great thread yesterday, and he was talking about a lot of these challenges. And let's start with tender volumes, because that kind of drives everything. Let's start there, Tony. What's happening?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of walking this to the bottom. I mean, that's the best way to describe it. We're about to cross over 2019 levels. Anybody that was in transportation really knows 2019 wasn't a great year in terms of trucking. It was one of those, it was an area or a year where we were coming off a very high boom cycle of 2018, oversupplied the market, ample demand kind of fell away, oversupplied, drove rates down. You see volumes kind of walk along this x-axis, really. I mean, if you drew the x-axis around that 10,000 mark on the OTVI, it's kind of where to think about is like this solid level. What's interesting, though, is we kind of came into March with a little momentum, and then since then, it was kind of this head fake. We've seen this decline from there. Past couple of days, we've seen a little bit of an uptick, kind of expected as you head in to the final week of the first quarter. But I mean, overall, especially when you compare it to the previous 2 years, it's tough out there in terms of volume itself.
Matt, what's the buzz around Covenant when it comes to volume and what's going on in the market?
So you do remember, I'm the future guy. I'm the long-term guy. So I'm not living in the day-to-day. But it's been. I know since we've got capacity as well, and we've got. It's funny because we got our allocations that we wanted for new trucks, and we're still trying to struggle with how do we modify that delivery schedule because we keep our trucks about 2.3, 2.7 years, and so trying to control the size of the fleet is just a challenge for us every day.
That is, and I know you're the future guy, so you don't have to do that equation, probably, thankfully. You don't want to be in the seat of doing that mix, but is there any tech that can help there, do you think?
If it is, I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
It's funny, so much of this is, and you know what it's like because you've had more people on the show than I've ever met, so much of it just takes place up here. You've got people that have been at the company for a long time, and they're looking at a spreadsheet, and they're like, we need to lose 100 trucks. We need to gain 100 trucks. We need to lease 100 trucks. We need to make a call to a brokerage department. I need you to cut some prices. We've got to, and it's you would think that there's a big black box, that there's a piece of technology that's, a dashboard that's telling you, giving you advice. And it's just, I admire the folks at our company that can just do that on the fly. It's amazing. But it just comes with years and years and years of experience.
Tony, let's talk for a second about these fleets that are about, like FreightWaves went out, right? The 250 to the 500. Are they especially susceptible in this market and what's happening with volumes?
Yeah, because they can get their volume can get concentrated a lot easier than, say, a larger carrier in that 1,000 plus. And in this market, shippers are coming for rate reductions or just competitive rates. And when that happens, you can start to get bid out of freight. And if you're concentrated and that freight goes away, well, now you've just lost a big percentage of your revenue. You start taking, I think in FreightWorks' case, it was something like 30% was allocated to one customer. You take that away, you're talking 30% reduction in revenue. You're not going to be able to keep up with how it's going. Best option in that case is to shut down. And it hurts to say that because I mean, obviously people's lives are affected, but running at a loss just kind of prolongs that issue. And that's kind of what you see. I mean, it's kind of this mix that you see. Some people will wait too long to make an exit, or some people may be proactive.
So it's the danger of dedicated, right? I mean, I have a truck right here, Fallen Flag, New England Motor Freight. They lost Amazon back in near the end of 2018, and that was it. It was like 35% of their freight, and that is just devastating to lose 35% of your business.
They also lost a front tire.
They lost well, that didn't help either. I mean, you're constantly late Amazon.
Is it like that on the other side that the viewers can see?
You know, this is actually George Abernathy's. He left it here for me when he went, so I've always been...
Can I throw something else into this too? In fact, the three of us should just stay here.
We could.
Yeah. So, not to jump ahead to some of the things that I saw when I was at Freightliner.
Sure.
But remember, I was there with 17 other fleets, right? CR England, JB Hunt, Penske, Ryder, Schneider, all the big fleets. And one of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about was sustainability and how that's playing into the way shippers are making decisions. And when you talk about, the struggles that we have it right now, and yet there are these massive sustainability initiatives that shippers are saying, hey, we need, greener solutions, help us reduce our carbon footprint. We all lamented that when you start putting solutions on the table that cost a little bit more because they're asking for a little bit more, we'll go back with the diesel rate. And I can tell you right now, there was I don't want to name names, but there was a provider who had just listened to the CEO of the shipping company on a podcast talking about reducing Scope 3 emissions through carrier spend, both through carrier selection. And when he was sitting at the table with his purchasing people, they said, we're going to go with the diesel truck. They had an electric quote and they had some other types of things in there in a solution. And so he said, it's tough because, sustainability, but, we want to pay diesel.
Well, no, it's not sustainable. Rejection rates right now, they are so low, Tony. Let's take a look at this chart. What is happening here? And what is the dynamic that happens when rejections are so low? What does that actually mean?
Yeah, so in this case, outbound tender rejection index is kind of that measure of relative capacity in the market, right? So shipper tenders a load to a carrier. It can be accepted or rejected. As it's rejected, moves down the routing guide. It can flow into the spot market. That's what you saw back in 2020, the end of 2020, and really through the beginning of 2022. That's where you saw spot rates, that pressure placed on spot rates. In this instance, you have kind of two things happening. We've oversupplied the market. I mean, I think we talked offline a little, just like how big the large carriers are in comparison to the overall market. It's what, 10% or something like that.
What's USX? What's the new Knight Swift USX monster? Like 90,000 trailers or something.
Yeah,
like that.
And it's 25,000 tractors, which I think if the for hire based on FMCSA, it was like 1.87 million. So you're talking like less than 1% of the total tractors in the for hire market. So it's big in terms of the number of tractors at one company, but overall, compared to the market, it's really ultimately small. You sell so many new entrants into the market that we've oversupplied the market. Then you factor in diesel prices right now where they're at, and the benefit that carriers that are moving contracted freight have is a fuel surcharge to kind of offset some of that elevated spending. There's to go into the spot market, which is where a lot of you can play in that when rejections are so high because rates are high. Well, now spot market rates are all-in rates. You have a fuel surcharge, and we'll talk about it in a minute.
Well, let's look at spot rates because rejections are at like 3.5%. They're near all-time series lows. Show us the spot rates. We'll take a look at those.
Yeah.
That is 167 FreightWaves National Truckload Index. It's line haul only, so you don't have fuel in there. Yeah. But that is abysmal as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking close to a carrier's break-even point, plus or minus a few cents at that point. So really, a carrier's there's no incentive to leave a contract. And that's why you're seeing rejection rates at 3% because before there was incentive, right? You could chase high rates. Now those high rates are no longer there. A spot rate is, again, near break even. The incentive is essentially gone. It's better to stay in a contract rate. Even though contract rates are starting to come down, they don't move near as quickly as spot rates do. So it's one of those give and takes. And right now I don't want to say it is shippers kind of in command of the market. It's not a name your price because this is where that relationship building becomes so important in the transportation market because ultimately, you may take a rate reduction, but as long as you service the freight, a shipper is still going to work with you. They want to see some improvement in that rate, but it's definitely an interesting time for sure.
Well, Matt, one of the reasons too, I think that this should make some people nervous is when you see these sustained low rates, the supply chain is all interconnected, right? So it's not like one carrier is doing bad. When every carrier is doing bad, everybody suffers, right? We all suffer within this freight ecosystem, even us over here in media, because people don't advertise as much. So the whole thing is bad. Is there anything hopeful? Like what's the dynamic going on with the spread between contract and spot?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking this. It's been at this 80-cent spread or somewhere around that spread between contract and spot for since about June of last year. So you're talking spot rates are offering a discount to contract rates at the moment. And at least when you break out the no fuel and when you start adding in fuel, it changes a little. But it's one of those things, you start looking at it, it's like you're going to have to see a couple things. Contract rates come down. I mean, they're moving down, but it's I think year to date, it's something like 8 to 10%. It's not a super rapid decline, but that spread's got to normalize at some point. And we've been talking about it for months that it's not sustainable where it's at. You're going to see kind of a normalization, but it's just more a matter of when does that actually happen? How does it happen? You're going to have to see consolidation in the market and ultimately exits out of the market because we have too much supply in the market. Now, I do want to say one thing, like compared to 2018, 2019, compared to now, is the larger fleets, those enterprise fleets, they didn't go out and buy a ton of trucks. They may have bought new trucks, but they didn't grow their fleets at the rate that they did in previous cycles, which was a good thing. That's what you were looking to see but the difference is we added so many on that smaller fleet side. And those are the fleets that are ultimately going to suffer the most in this situation.
Unfortunately, we are now in that bloodbath period too, where we are having multiple carriers shut down. We're reporting in a day. And these are not just small ones. These aren't the 10s, 5s. We're at 200 trucking employees over at FreightWaves. 544 trucks out of work with them. There was LTL provider, 46 trucks, 50 years of experience out of Michigan. That was Mulder & Sons Trucking. Who else do we got here? 213 truck drivers out of work as Wells Fargo pulls UFI into bankruptcy. 248 trucks as postal carrier shuts down. 148 trucks and LTL carrier shut down in Vermont. Why are there so many land airs, by the way? If you look at, there's like 10 billion land airs.
There are, yeah. And Landstar kind of sounds the same.
Are they even the same thing? I don't even know. And another 155 carriers shut down. This was pushed over the edge by a nuclear verdict, but obviously the market didn't help there. Brutal.
And before I came over here, I picked up my taxes.
Yes.
And I owe money, so I'll be ordering less. So there's my contribution
so now
to now I'm not going to spend as much money as Amazon.
Yeah, well, and then you factor in the other sides of the consumer, right? With the Fed decisions to continue to raise interest rate costs, the cost of credit or cost of debt has continued to rise, and eventually you see the credit spending continuing, but I don't know if that rising interest rate, I mean, you're talking credit card interest rates well over 20% on average. Eventually, it's going to squeeze the consumer to spend. They're going to do one of two things: continue to spend rapidly and not worry about it, and then face the music when it comes, or they're going to rein in their spending.
Tony, they need to make like Affirm and Clara or whatever those like instant loan companies. You see it on Amazon all the time, and it's like, yeah, you can buy this Amazon thing, buy now, pay later at like 33% interest. And it's like, whoa, that is so predatory. And people are gonna get killed in this economy. And it's unfortunate because look, you make that short-term money now, but eventually people can't make their bills, right? So when are they gonna buy from you next? Like you're front loading the quarter, sure. But what happens?
Need to write some more Dave Ramsey films.
Films.
Yeah, or whatever he does to spend less.
Yeah.
Tony, can you leave us with anything hopeful?
I mean, obviously, the summer, you typically see some uptick in shipping. Look at the ocean. We saw a rebound post-Lunar New Year, but the indications there are some slowing again on the ocean. But, I mean, that would be the first place I'd look. But, I mean, hopefully we'll see diesel prices come down. That helps drop operating expenses because if you can't make it in revenue, stay profitable by making more revenue, you've got to offset that on the cost side.
Yes.
And that's where it gets a little fuzzy. I mean, you're going to see potential layoffs. But if fuel prices come down, it's one help at least. So we'll see if that trend continues. I saw today WTI was at lowest point since 2021. So
let me ask your opinion on this. You may not know anything about it, but I did just come from an event where there was a lot of talk, right? Water cooler talk, if that's what you want to call it, among the fleet, among different fleets. They're not expecting as much activity in Long Beach because they're spending a lot dredging out and making some of these other ports around the country more accessible, more attractive. We're starting to talk to some of the other fleets that are investing more in Savannah and down in Texas, and not as much activity. I think some of it is just because of people just are trying to stay out of California, you know, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. There's a lot of California laws coming online soon that controls the age of the trucks that can come into the port. There's a ton of zero emission vehicle requirements that are coming to the state. And I think that there's going to be port activity in places not California.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a trend. We were talking about it earlier today. If you start looking at like where markets that have taken share in terms of volume, it's been those Gulf Coast, mainly Houston, and then East Coast port markets have really seen this expansion. And I think it is going to be a trend you see because California to do business with is getting more and more difficult. And I think that's a trend that is going to, until California, which it doesn't seem like that's going to be likely, goes more pro-business, I think we're going to see other options here on the East Coast. And then, even down into Mexico and then bringing it up cross-border, I think that's an option as well that you may see more and more.
Give me that wheel, please. I need to spin that thing.
Let me hold it.
Yeah, sure. All right. Like Vanna White over here.
Vanna, you took it.
You know that she never wore the same dress twice? Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
All right. Well, Tony, here's your stupid question.
All right.
To confuse NASA, leave one object on Mars. What is it?
Oh, to confuse NASA. I don't know. That's a tough. Oh, this is hard. Oh, man. I'm going to go with cowbell. Just flies a cowbell.
You stole mine. I was like, I will just leave this one right here.
You know what I would say? Elon Musk's wallet.
Elon Musk's wallet? What about a hang glider?
No, Elon Musk's wallet, because he wants to be the guy on the moon.
And they're just like, you've already been here.
He's already been here.
You've already been here.
That's a good one.
Brilliant. All right. Hey, Tony, thank you so much.
Thanks
for joining us today. Take care. All right, everybody. Meanwhile, take a look at this guy here. Poor guy. He's not going to have a good day with that tire.
Oh, no. Is that Chevy Chase?
He got pantsed by the tire.
Where did you find that?
I find it everywhere. I don't know. I got eyes and ears all over this place. I feel bad. You used to be able to do this and you could just live in silence with your shame.
That's like a Ring camera that's always
Yes, and now like people have you recorded all the time, and then you end up on What the Truck. Or Matt and Dooner making fun of you.
There you go.
No, you're a strong guy. All right, Matt McClellan, he's VP of Sustainability and Innovation at Covenant. He's been up here. He's just back from Daimler Truck North America in Portland, Oregon. But I got to ask you, you were in that room with all these other trucking companies when the USX news broke. What were people saying? You don't have to like name names or give details, but like, what was that about?
I knew something was up because, you have and there was probably 50, 60 people in the room.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the phone came up and then there was a, and then there was a lot of texting, and pretty soon everybody had their phone up, and then I picked my phone up, and I'd gotten 3 or 4 texts, some from the people in the room. And so it was, we were all surprised. I think on some level, we knew something was going to happen.
Yeah.
Nobody ever it's funny in the industry, and I've only been in it hardcore for 5 or 6 years now. I was with the 3PL before that. Nobody gloats. Nobody takes any pride when a competitor goes under. I've just never experienced that. We're all kind of in it together. We're also competing against each other, but, we also go out and have dinner at night.
This is a business where I think we have a lot of empathy for each other, too, because of, especially acid-based, because of how expensive it is to keep those. There's so many different events that can tank you and put you out. And I think in the back of your head, there's fear within every carrier that it's just bad karma to kick another one when it goes down.
Yeah. There's, the gentleman in charge of U.S. Express's asset-based division, keeping the trucks on the roads, named Sean. He gives me his personal cell phone number and has said, hey, if you have questions, this is, of course, a year ago, about this particular project that you're thinking about investing in. It was a particular device that we're going to put on the truck that was going to have some carbon reduction. He's like, we've done that. Call me, talk to me, ask me. He says, there's probably nothing that I can't share with you if it was successful for us, it would be successful to you. And you can have conversations like that. And so one of my closest sort of industry peers is a guy at Warner.
Yeah.
Of course, I love the people at my own organization, but it's just great to be able to share ideas. And whenever something like that happens, you hate it. I don't know about you, but I've gotten resumes from people already, and I'm going to do everything I can to try to help them out.
It's
all about the network.
I've gotten plenty of reach out, and the unfortunate thing for a lot of them though is like, look, I hear a lot of other people are struggling like too. Maybe this will work out for you, but there's not as many options as there was like a year or two ago when it was just easier to help people out and place them. But you were over at Daimler. We got a picture of you over there. What did you see? Let's start with like autonomous vehicles. What were they showcasing here?
So I was there for 3 reasons. And what they do is they have these councils. What they do is they bring all these customers in. Typically, it's the larger private and for-hire fleets. And they just listen and they ask lots of questions. One day is dedicated. It's called the On-Highway Council. They talk about the cab design. They talk about changes. What if we made this change to the ADAS system? How would this affect you? And, it just ends up being, there's a lot of opinions in the room. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a lot of really high powered individuals in that room, and they take notes and they make changes based on that. So I was there specifically for a half a day on autonomous, a half a day on ESG and how we could sort of work together and start sort of promoting some of these things internally as an industry. And then an entire day on electric vehicles. Yeah. So it was great.
Was the AV, was the autonomous impressive at all? What were people saying about that? What was the feedback?
So that was a small group. There was just a handful of us in that one, and it was really just to kind of bring up to date. So there's several players in the market now, one less as of a few weeks ago. Embark is no longer with us, at least not in the same way that it was. And so Locomotion's out of there too. And so Daimler acquired 75% of a company called Torque, and so they're one.
I've been to Torque. They call them Tormlers. The Torque Daimler mix. When you go over to Torque City, they're like these. Yeah,
I've seen a few stickers. Yeah. So that was one of we partnered with Aurora and with Torque, and so we were there. What we spent most of the time talking about was the whole last mile, because autonomous is point to point. It doesn't go all the way to the end destination, because that what we call the file mount, or we call it the dray piece. Dallas to Houston is there on the interstate, but you get off and the autonomous truck is not as good at navigating busy city roads, lots of turns, and so you typically have another truck that does the last mile. It could be anywhere from 1 to probably 10 miles, maybe 15. And you don't want all of your cost savings that come from autonomous to disappear on that piece of it. So we talked a lot about how can we solve that problem collectively, but then for the larger fleets like Schneider and Ryder, how could they may be able to absorb that cost because they've got so much infrastructure that they already own. But for Covenant, we don't have terminals all over the country like some of the other fleets do. So it was a great conversation. But again, we were in the room as competitors, all sharing ideas. And I think maybe one time it got into a situation where, I can't really talk about that. Rising tide floats all boats.
I guess so. Yeah, no, you got to collect, especially on this new tech. So this gets conflated a lot, is the AV in the EV space. You, when you're out here, because you are in charge of making these decisions, what interests you most immediately? Is it the EV space or the AV space, or kind of neither at the moment because they're not where you need them to be? I was with you at Manifest, and I heard a lot of EV pitches to you, and you're like, that's great. I need a truck that goes more than 120 miles a day. Yeah,
so it's interesting. I think a lot of people, of course, your viewers of this show all know that no fleet is the same. There's some that specialize in reefer. There's some that's long haul. There's some LTL. There's full truckload. We're long haul, full truckload, right? So the length of haul, the average length of haul for us is nowhere close to what a battery electric truck is capable of. So 2, maybe 300 miles, depending on what brand you go with. It's just not going to do it for us. We did experiment with 2 trucks last year. The customer loved it. It was more pricey, but then the infrastructure and the cost and the planning to build the charging stations was also going to be a challenge. So it's not a big part of our roadmap. But NFI, for example, out of, I think, what are they, New Jersey? I forget where they're based out of. Huge, massive 3PL. I think they've got 25, maybe 30 trucks, mostly out in LA at the port for drayage work. So, it's just not a big part of our future.
These things are pricey. I mean, like the 150 mile range EVs are even like 350,000. Autonomous trucks are over $1 million right now. Neither seemed that viable for carriers like your type. But how do you think about this tech in a down market? Does that impact what you can invest in and how you have to think about this?
It's a great question, and fortunately, we don't have to think about it a lot because it is so far out on the horizon. When you're publicly traded, you're kind of quarter to quarter. And so, obviously you think long-term it wouldn't be in business very long if you didn't, but it's so far out on the horizon that, when you're at least 2 years away, you can't make a lot of investment right now. So, we're looking at other things, but that's just not one of them. We actually have a lot of hope for hydrogen. We might be doing a hydrogen test this year. Still trying to sort that out. That gets you about 500 miles.
Ooh.
Yeah, so.
Head over to Hyliion, talk to my buddy Thomas Ely over there.
You rode in one of those, didn't you?
I did ride in one of those. It's actually in the intro view. That's the truck I'm driving is the Hyliion.
Yeah. So, the thing I'm most looking forward to next is there's something called ACT Expo. Will you go to that, by the way?
I'm not.
So they're going to have, I hung out with the guy that organizes it, Eric Neandros at GNA. They've got 13,000 people.
Yeah.
It's probably the biggest logistics sort of thing I've been to. This is dedicated specifically to alternative fuels and fleets. And so if that's your thing, this is the event to go to. So anyway, that's where I get a lot of my inspiration from and thinking about the future. We're kind of in this thing right now that they call the messy middle, right? So you've got legacy diesel and then you've got the future, right?
Yeah.
Hydrogen and ZEVs and, we'll talk about Carb in a minute. And then there's this middle ground where we are right now. We got to have different types of sort of tools in our solution chest to kind of meet some of those needs. Renewable diesel, more biodiesel, electric APUs, things that can kind of get us from traditional diesel kind of a little bit closer to the finish line. But it's messy.
Well, let me ask you, because before we jump to Desmond, and he's listening very patiently, but this will probably apply to him too. Hey, Desmond, we'll see you. I'll have you up in just a second. Carb 2024. What do we need to know? What does he need to know? What does everyone else need to know?
So, a segment needs to be dedicated to that, and it's still changing. So, there's two things that are happening soon. 2024, there's a certain percentage of your fleet that has to be zero emission, and they're probably going to be able to get away from, I'm simplifying, it's a lot more complicated than this, and a lot of stuff hasn't been sorted out. And by the way, it's not just Carb, California Air Resources Board. There's 16 other states that are going to subscribe to what Carb does. So this is something that's going to affect all of us.
And New York will always follow at some point.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think they're one of the, they're one of the 16. Right, but every year after 2024, a larger percentage of your fleet, your diesel trucks have to meet standards that right now none of the OEMs are able to meet, from a NOx and a PM, particulate matter standard. And then at some point, a proportional amount of your fleet has to be zero emissions. And there just aren't a lot of practical solutions on the horizon right now. And so one of the big takeaways from this is all of us that are substantial in size have to start paying attention to this and have to start thinking about what percentage of our fleet is going to be zero emission at some point in the future.
The future is coming quick.
Man, the future is coming quick. I'll come back and I'll tell you when we know more. I'll tell you the other. Well, I'll come back and tell you when we know a little bit more.
Cool. Well, let's tip to Ben and we'll talk to Desmond, because he's got a great story too. So send us the hard stuff. That's what Donovan Logistics says when you run into that really challenging logistics nightmare that keeps you up at night, Matt.
Man,
you were the red eye kept you.
Don't talk about that with me. I'm about to fall asleep right now.
Call the good folks over at Donovan. They make headaches disappear. Visit them at donovan.com. Well, yeah, but see, our next guest right now is this gentleman has played in the Super Bowl, a former Bear. I believe he also played for the Dolphins and maybe even the Broncos, if I'm not mistaken. I've used him. I've picked him up as a free agent in Madden before. It's Des Clark, or some know him as Desmond Clark. He's the president and founder over at Bear Down Logistics. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure to be on, man. Thanks for having me on the platform.
Well, hey, and I know Matt was stopping by the studio, and I was like, hey, Matt, I got a guy coming on. He was in the Super Bowl before. He started up a brokerage over in the Florida area. He's got 2 offices. He started in down market. He's been in it for about a year now. You want to sit in? Because Matt, he's with one of the biggest carriers in America, Covenant. So he'll help us with some advice here, too.
I wasn't going to come until I heard you were going to be on.
Well, I'm glad you're here because I can use all the advice, all the good advice that I can get right now.
Oh, we got a lot of that, don't we?
Well, we may, but we're both sports fans too, and like everybody who interviews you probably got a few questions, and I gotta hit you up with a few because I gotta know what is more electric, because you were with Wake Forest, right? You were on some good Wake Forest teams, and you were also
all bad Wake Forest teams when I was there. They got good after I left.
Oh, all right. It's okay. Well, it was still a good. So this is going to be an easy one. What's more electric to play in, like a really good college atmosphere or a really good pro NFL atmosphere?
No, I think it's a really good college atmosphere. Like the college atmospheres, they're crazy. The professional atmospheres, they're good, but nothing like playing in front of 100,000 screaming. I mean, they're kids and they're going nuts. So I would always say that the college atmosphere is a little bit more electric than a professional atmosphere.
Wow. What about the Super Bowl? Because, I mean, you have been there. There's a media day, and that's got to be like a completely different animal than just a regular game.
Well, that's different. And then the Super Bowl, so you got to think about who's at the game, right? At the Super Bowl, you got a lot of the corporate America people. So they're not going to go as rowdy as the young 18 to 22-year-olds that fill up most of the college stadiums. I believe even if you compare the Super Bowl to, let's just say, a Michigan-Ohio State game or a Auburn-Alabama, those college games are going to have way more electricity just because the nature of the crowd, of the people that's in the stadium at the time.
You know what? You got to play during the era of two sort of memed quarterbacks. You had Sexy Rexy and you had Smoking Jay Cutler. What was it like playing with those dudes? I love the Smoking Jay Cutler memes, man.
Man, and they're so right on, right? They having a cigarette coming out of their mouth. It's funny. It was great playing for both of them. Rex was my guy. Rex was the favorite quarterback that I ever played with in the NFL. Jay was the most talented quarterback that I ever played with in the NFL, and he had the biggest arm, the most athleticism. But if I had to pick one to play with, just by the guy that I like most, it would definitely be Rex.
Are there? How far into the new business venture are you? Did you just start up, or have you been in business for a little while?
I've been in business since October of 2021. I actually started my MC May of 2022, so almost a year of operations now.
Anything in the game teach you about running a business? Any parallels, any lessons learned that the rest of us will never be able to benefit from because, we didn't have, there's a lot to be said, I guess, for teamwork and maybe pressure and operating under pressure, making decisions, lightning quick and not overthinking.
He was on the Crown Their Ass team. You were on the one where you beat the Cardinals that time, right? I love that.
Yeah, but what is there a parallel?
Crown Their Ass. Do you remember that? So they had this huge comeback. I think it was Monday Night Football, or maybe a Thursday Night Football.
It was a Sunday night game.
Oh, it was Sunday night.
We didn't score an offensive touchdown that game, and we still won the game. I think it was like 26-24. Arizona Cardinals, they absolutely demolished us on the offensive side of the ball, but our defense had a touchdown. I think Devin Hester had 2 returns for a touchdown. And however we scored those points, I think we won 24-23, but we won without an offensive touchdown. Rex threw 4 interceptions that game. We were absolutely horrible on the offensive side of the ball. But the reason why he said that is because they kind of kicked our tail in the preseason also. But now I think we were like 6 or 7-0, and he was a little pissed that we stole that game, and we knew we stole that game. You should have seen the celebration in the locker room after the game. We were tossing chairs and trash cans and tossing over tables because we knew we had just stolen that game.
Wow. So what kind of lesson did you learn in the locker room, or did you learn from that? Like maybe bad freight market, you're down 26-0 in this market. Don't bail out.
Hey, so the thing about this market is I got in right when it started to bottom out in May of 2022. So I don't know any other market, and I was oblivious to all of this until like the end of the year. So, but the thing that I did learn, and is a lesson that we can all learn, not just in sports, man, you're going to get kicked at some point when you're doing business. And at the beginning, it seemed like we were catching left jabs, right hooks, and everything. The hardest thing when you start out in this business as a new broker is people don't want to work with you because you're new. And I didn't get that. I didn't understand that. So what we did when we had these carriers saying, no, we can't work with you because, we won't be able to factor with you with our factoring company. I started just picking up the phone, calling the factoring companies, asking, well, why won't you work with us? I understand that we're new, but that's not a good reason not to work with someone, right? We have the funding, we got good operations here. And what happened was they started calling audibles for us. Okay, we'll give you $2,500 of credit. You do this one, right, then we'll extend it to you. And that's how we got over that hump of being a new company and not being able to work with a lot of good reputable carriers, because we just say, you know what? Let's just call and see why and see how do we make these halftime adjustments when people are telling us no, they won't work with us.
Well, if you like intensity, you picked and to be, to have a lot of adrenaline, to be scared of markets and stuff, you picked a good business. But it's got me curious because, you hear this from athletes a lot, especially if you've played on the biggest stage. How hard is it to leave the sport and not have that to show up to? Because a lot of, you hear like Tom Brady, why doesn't he just retire or this? And it's like, because if you do, then you don't get to get the job again. And it's like once in a lifetime kind of thing. What does it feel like once it's over?
It feels just like that. It's over. Like, and you can't get that locker room atmosphere. You can't get all your teammates and just, you go through so much together. I mean, you get to go to a job where you're literally wearing sweats all the time. And I think more so for most of the athletes, you can't get that that competition. You can't get that again like you get in a locker room when you got to go to battle every Sunday, or if it's NBA every couple nights, and baseball like every day. You can't get that nowhere else at that high of a level. Yes, I heard you guys saying you guys compete and we all compete with each other in this industry, but it's not like that hand-to-hand comeback where you actually just going out there and running into people. That becomes addicting. I think it goes to without saying that the money is another thing that you walk away from, and good luck at trying to reproduce that type of pay. Some people do it, and we're in an industry where you can, if you do things the right way over time, maybe so, but those are the things that you miss the most, and just going in every day. I used to love practicing every day, and you just can't replace that in any other industry out here in the world.
Well, then why this? How did you end up to, like, how did the journey take you to Freight?
Accidentally.
Welcome to the club.
So I before this, I was doing all speaking globally as a motivational speaker. I was doing leadership coaching, and I was doing a lot of stuff on LinkedIn as far as promoting myself and marketing myself. And that's when my mentor, my partner, he noticed me. He brought me over and said, hey, I think I got some marketing things that we could do together. He's in the industry. He does drayage only, Dre Depot, my guy, Brian. And that's when I started learning about this industry. And long story short, he wanted me to do some marketing stuff with him. But when I learned that he was in this small niche of drayage, I learned about all of these other modes of transportation. I learned about this industry. I learned about how it operates at, not at in the intricate scale of things, but I was intrigued. And then I gave him a proposal saying, instead of coming and working with you, how about I develop my own brokerage and I do all these other modes of transportation that you don't do. And now we could toss opportunity across the table to each other. And that's how it all got started.
Beautiful.
And what is it now? What is Bear Down Logistics?
Bear Down Logistics, we are a company that we do long and short haul, full truckload. We've actually started a dispatching company as well as bringing on drayage with my partner over at Dre Depot and warehousing. So what I understood very, very early is that the more of this process that you can implement into what you're doing, the better you're going to be in this industry. But that's only if you can do it the right way, and control, more, I guess, 75, 80, 90% of the supply chain from when it's coming in to when it's getting to that final mile. That puts you in a better position to go out into the market and offer more value. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to accomplish. And so far, so good.
Matt, what kind of advice would you have for someone like Des?
Me?
Yeah.
Him?
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't know. Check our capacity first.
Yeah. Oh, check Covenant's capacity first.
You know, we do run some empty loads every once in a while, not because we want to. So, how big is your is your team? I mean, is everyone focused there at one location, or are you spread out across the country, or?
So everybody is focused here at one location. I do have one person up in Chicago because we do have a Chicago office also, as well as an Orlando office. We have a small team of 7 people right now. And then if you include the drayage operation with my partner, Brian, at Dray Depot, now you go up to, I think he has like 21 or 22 people within his operation. But here in Orlando, we have 6 with 1 in Chicago. And we're small, but we're mighty. And I love it. I did have a bigger team coming into January. I made my first mistake of riding that wave of, oh man, we up to $100,000 in revenue and we're growing, and now we're up to this amount of revenue and we're growing. So let's bring on 6 people all at one time. And I didn't do the proper vetting. And out of those 6 people, we had to let go of 4 because some of the guys didn't produce, and that's the first big mistake that I've made as owner here of Bear Down Logistics. And now it's all about, hey, how can we continue to grow at a good pace, but not try to grow too fast where we outdo ourselves and take unnecessary risks that we don't have to take.
Well, how can you? What is a tougher opponent, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, or a down freight market?
Well, this down freight market hadn't been much of an opponent because I didn't know it coming in. I didn't know that it was a down market. I heard about it, but I'm so focused on, man, I got to drive revenue. I got to get in here. I got to make this company work, that I didn't pay attention to what was going on out there. I was more so paying attention to what was going on in here, and we became our own opponent. We got to make these 100 calls. We got to convert. We can't let, hey, this driver just fell off our load. We got to go back and get that load back, because if we don't, then we lose this client, and we only got a handful of clients. We can't afford to lose anything. So I wasn't paying attention to the outside market. I was paying attention to what was going on in here. Now, when you talk about a guy like Aaron Rodgers, man, that dude is tough, and as we know, he's beaten us quite a few times. So right now, at this point, I'm gonna say a great quarterback is tougher than a tough market in the logistics industry. But that's me saying that without having really paid attention to the outside market and only been paying attention to what's been going on inside of the walls here at Bear Down Logistics.
Well, yeah, but now you're the quarterback, Des, right? You're the quarterback. And he wrote something. You have a little philosophy you put on LinkedIn, and this might have come from the locker room too. It said, I've come to learn that aggression is an asset and a liability. Unfocused aggression is wild. It's hysterical bar fighting. What does that mean in the context of running a brokerage?
So just like I said, earlier, I got really aggressive, and I wanted to hire because, hey, man, we're doing so well, so all we got to do is bring more people, and it's going to just keep going. But that wasn't the right move to make. And in that piece that I wrote, you don't start out with aggression. You start out with planning, studying, and knowing the landscape, knowing your opponent. And then once you get all that stuff under control and you know what your game plan is, that's when you have to be aggressive. So I learned from both sides of that. You just can't go out and just be aggressive for the sake of being aggressive. You got to have controlled aggression and know exactly what you're trying to get accomplished before you unleash that aggression. And I think that's what I talked about in that piece that I posted on LinkedIn.
But is your office like, remember that commercial where the dude just run by and tackle everybody? You just run by and like tackling brokers or games. Is Covenant full contact sport?
No.
Is Bear Down full contact?
I remember that commercial that you're talking about.
The Old Spice one, right?
It was the Old Spice. Yeah.
And they had another one where they had the office linebacker.
Yes.
You know what? If these guys don't make the calls that I need them to make, I go in there and I tackle them all the time. No, I'm just kidding.
I love it.
Just kidding.
We're a lot softer as a society now.
Pretty intense, man. We get pretty intense, and they like it.
Well, Desmond, before we let you go, 2 last questions. First of all, who should contact you? Who should work with you?
Guys, carriers who are struggling to get loads. First of all, we have a bunch of broker relationships out there that if we can't get you loads, we can go out to the market and get you loads. And then also those customers who want somebody who's dependable. Here's the thing that I've learned in less than a year of being in operation. Customers just want somebody who's going to deal with them transparently, who can get the job done. But we all know in logistics, stuff happens, right? And I always tell my guys, if it happens, let's make sure that the customer is not calling us. We're calling them, but not just with a problem, but hey, here's the problem, but here's what we're doing about it. And if we got customers out there that can appreciate that type of communication and who's been struggling with other brokerages that don't communicate and execute as well as you need them to, those are the people that we're looking to work with. We're really starting to get into that bigger market like Walgreens and Kroger's and doing RFPs and things like that. That's the next level that we're going to. But right now, we deal with a lot of smaller to mid-market type of companies that do shipping.
Excellent. And what's it like to play with yourself in Madden?
I never played with myself in Madden.
No?
I didn't. So that's like people always say, hey, man, you did a wonderful job speaking. Do you ever go back and listen to yourself after you do a nice speech? I never listen to myself. I never go back and look at myself and critique myself or say I've done a nice job. Like I couldn't stand to see myself on the Madden game because I would look at myself like, oh, he sucks on the game.
Oh, wow. I get it. I hear you.
I never can go back and look at myself like that and appreciate it. So I'm glad that you did.
Well, when the ratings would come out every August, would you guys all freak out in the locker room if they weren't what you thought they should be?
My ratings were never, ever what they should have been, ever. I always felt like I got disrespected in Madden for whatever reason. But you know what? Now I could. But that's been a competitor, right? When you're in the game, you can't appreciate the fact that you're just in the game. But now that I'm 12 years or 11 years removed from the game, I can go back and I can appreciate all of that stuff. Now, I never appreciated the fact that I played in the Super Bowl until about 3 years after I retired. And then I started looking around like, hell, that was a pretty good accomplishment, even though we lost. But I've never watched that Super Bowl to this day.
It's gotta be hard. I can hear you. Keep the channel off ESPN Classics. You don't want that one. It wasn't the best game either. I was rooting for you guys. I didn't really need to see that because I was over in the Northeast, more of a Patriots fan. So I was like, no way. I need Tom Brady to stay the best, not Peyton Manning.
Well, Des, help you with that, man.
Des, thank you so much. If people want to reach out, they want to find your company, where do we send them?
Just go to www.beardown-logistics. And you have to put the dash in there because we are a Florida company. And there is another Bear Down Logistics in Chicago. So www.beardown-logistics.com.
Hey, have a great weekend. Thank you so much for coming on the show. God bless you.
You too.
Take care.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Matt.
What a great story.
That was a great story.
Yeah. It's funny. I think about if my sort of ship came in and I was looking for a Matt 2.0, like what would that business be? What would it be for you?
Wait, what am I doing? This guy, I got to do something else?
Like a professional dog walker or...
maybe like a professional Lego assembler?
Oh, yeah. Since you've got all this experience with strapping down products on top of vehicles, you can be a strap consultant.
I could be a strap consultant.
Sounds weird.
Maybe I could be Arizona Iced Tea's social media person. It's good news, bad news, people.
Bad news and good news.
This one's Matt, by the way. He didn't crash. He was fine. Anyways, Arizona Iced Tea. Arizona Iced Tea has been inflation-proof, 99 cents. That's the good news.
I like the unsweetened version.
Well,
I just had some.
The bad news is that retailers are marking up, and it's got their social media person pissed off. Let's take a listen to him.
I didn't do this. I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about any of this.
It's like Jared from Subway.
Well, that guy. There's a Hulu documentary.
There's a pitch man. Right, yeah, there is, isn't there?
He's been in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Matt, you ever paint yourself up and not be able to get it off before?
I'm trying to think of stupid things I might have done in college.
Yeah.
I don't think it was ever that bad.
Well, was it ever as bad as this? Good news, you found some war paint and are going to get made up. Bad news, this happens.
Not. coming off, Shine.
Shine's face.
It's called oil-based paint.
Shine has got layers. Shine has got layers on him. I don't know. Do we want to do trucker versus broker? Nah. Let's just. The one thing we didn't get to is I don't know. We don't have much time. We got 90 seconds. All right. Maybe we'll listen to this for 1 second. Roll this for like 30 seconds. Roll this for like 30 seconds, guys. Trucker versus broker, please. Maybe a
trucker versus broker, yeah.
Operator
One bag of
versus
chips.
There you go.
all
That price
broker.
will go way up because it will be one bag of chips and a whole lot of people that want them. But it's millions of chips, millions and millions of chips. So when you got millions and millions of chips or millions and millions of carriers, rates are going to go down. You know, it's a lot of you guys. There's 1,000 guys that I'm going to talk to between today and tomorrow that are trying to get out of Colorado.
Okay.
And I'm not going to be able to put. I'm not going to be able to put something on everybody's truck because that I know that I have more than you than I have cargo. That's going to drive the rates down. Now, if I come up with a whole bunch of cargo,
Okay, you can drop it. So, like, the gist of that is there's just that thing goes on for 6 minutes, and it's a trucker and a broker talking about this 689-mile load with 3 stops that's paying $700. And the trucker is like, can I please just get a little bit more money to pay for gas in this? And all the time the broker's like, telling him about potato chips, just giving him all these analogies. And he's like, the market sucks right now. It does suck.
Is that an entire channel or is that just a one-off?
That goes on for like 6 minutes. That one was on TikTok.
Wow. How about that? You know, there's I hate to admit it, but I do spend a little bit of time on TikTok. There's some crazy trucker things out there.
There's Crazy Matt on there, too. Hey,
Crazy
we're
Matt.
out of time, everybody. Find me on Twitter, @TimmyTwitter. Look at Matt McClellan on that. Subscribe to the show wherever you get it. Hey, buddy, now you can get home and take a nap.